Welcome to Paranormal Northwest, a podcast all about the history and the paranormal of the Pacific Northwest. Join me as I tell stories of this great region, the history, the people who live here, and those who may have never left. Today we're traveling north to Anchorage, Alaska, and checking into the Historic Anchorage Hotel. As usual, we will also be looking at the broader historical context that the Anchorage Hotel resides in. But don't worry, this episode has a very satisfying paranormal aspect. So grab your sweater, your blanket, and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Early history and the indigenous peoples. The Dena'ina Athabascan people. The area now known as Anchorage, Alaska, was originally inhabited by the Dena'ina Athabascan people, a subgroup of the larger Athabascan linguistic family, for thousands of years before European contact. The Dena'ina, also known as the Tanana, have a rich cultural heritage and a deep connection to the land and waterways of south central Alaska. The Dena'ina people were organized into semi-nomadic bands, with social structures centered around family groups and clans. They established seasonal villages, typically located near rivers and streams, which were abundant with salmon and other fish, a staple of their diet. These villages included permanent and semi permanent structures made from locally sourced materials, such as wood and animal hides. The Dena'ina adapted their lifestyle to the harsh Alaskan environment through a mix of hunting, fishing, and gathering. They were skilled hunters targeting moose, caribou, and small game, which provided meat, hides, and bones for tools and clothing. Fishing was particularly crucial, with salmon runs providing a reliable source of food that could be dried or smoked for winter storage. Additionally, they gathered wild plants, berries, roots, and nuts which supplemented their diet and provided medicinal resources. The Dena'ina people engaged in trade with neighboring indigenous groups, such as the Yupik, Alutwick, and other Athabascan bands. They exchanged goods such as furs, fish, and crafted items, fostering a network of relationships and cultural exchanges across the region. This trade network extended even to coastal areas, allowing the Dena'ina to establish items not available in their immediate environment. Dena'ina's spiritual beliefs were closely tied to the natural world, emphasizing a deep respect for the land, animals, and waterways. They practiced animism, believing that all elements of nature possessed spirits. This worldview influenced their daily activities, rituals, and storytelling traditions. Shamanic practices played a significant role in their spiritual life, with shamans serving as healers, spiritual leaders, and mediators between the human and spirit worlds. The Dena'ina maintained a rich oral tradition, passing down stories, legends, and historical accounts through generations. These narratives served to educate younger members of the community about their cultural values, history, and survival skills. Storytelling was an essential aspect of social gatherings, helping to preserve the collective memory and identity of the Dena'ina people. The arrival of Russian explorers and traders in the 18th century marked the beginning of significant changes for the Dena'ina people. Although the Russians established trading posts and missions, their direct influence on the Dena'ina was limited compared to coastal regions. However, the introduction of new goods, diseases, and cultural practices began to alter traditional ways of life. By the time the United States purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867, the Dena'ina, like many indigenous groups, were experiencing the profound impacts of increased European and American presence. Despite these challenges, the Dena'ina people have maintained their cultural heritage and continue to play a vital role in the social and cultural fabric of the Anchorage area. Today, the Dena'ina people are active in preserving and revitalizing their cultural traditions. Efforts include language revitalization programs, cultural education initiatives, and community events that celebrate their heritage. The presence of the Dena'ina Civic and Convention Center in downtown Anchorage symbolizes the enduring legacy and contributions of the Dena'ina people to the region. In the 18th century, Russian explorers and traders ventured into Alaska, driven by the lucrative fur trade. The Russian American Company, a state sponsored enterprise, established trading posts and settlements primarily along the southern coast and the Aleutian Islands. Prominent Russian explorers like Vitus Bering and Alexei Shirokov charted the Alaskan coastline, laying the groundwork for Russian claims in the region. While the Russians established significant settlements such as Novo Archangelisk, present-day Sitka, and trading posts on Kodiak Island and the Kenai Peninsula, their influence in the Anchorage area was minimal. The Dena'ina people's inland territory and the challenging geography of south-central Alaska limited Russian expansion into the area. The focus remained on coastal areas where sea otters and other valuable fur-bearing animals were abundant. By the mid-19th century, Russia was dealing with significant economic changes and geopolitical pressures. The Crimean War of 1853 to 1856 had strained the Russian economy, and maintaining distant colonies like Alaska had become increasingly burdensome. Additionally, Russia faced the threat of British expansion from Canada, raising concern about defending its Alaskan territory. These factors led Russian officials, including Tsar Alexander II, to consider selling Alaska to a friendly power rather than risking losing it to the British. The idea of selling Alaska was broached by Russian officials in the early 1860s. In 1867, negotiations intensified, led by Russian ambassador to the United States Edward D. Stuckel and U.S. Secretary of State William H. Seward. Seward, a strong advocate of American expansionism, saw the acquisition of Alaska as an opportunity to extend U.S. influence and counter British power in the Pacific. The negotiations culminated in the signing of the Treaty of Secession on March 30, 1867. The Treaty of Secession outlined the terms of the sale, with the United States agreeing to pay $7.2 million for Alaska, amounting to approximately 2 cents per acre. The payment was to be made in gold. The treaty also stipulated that the indigenous peoples of Alaska would be free to maintain their lifestyles, and that Russian settlers could choose to remain in Alaska and become U.S. citizens or return to Russia. The United States ratified the treaty The United States Senate ratified the treaty on April 9, 1867, and the formal transfer of Alaska occurred on October 18, 1867. However, the acquisition faced significant public and political criticism. Many Americans viewed the purchase as a waste of money for a remote and seemingly barren territory, coining the term Seward's Folly or Seward's Icebox. Critics questioned the strategic value and economic potential of Alaska, skeptical of Seward's vision of expansion. Despite the initial ridicule, the Alaska Purchase eventually proved to be strategically and economically advantageous for the United States. The acquisition extended U.S. territory by 586,412 square miles, providing a wealth of natural resources and strategic advantages. Over time, the Alaska Purchase has been recognized as a visionary move that significantly benefited the United States. The economic contributions of Alaska's natural resources and the strategic military advantages during critical periods of history validated Seward's foresight. The incorporation of Alaska into the United States also contributed to the nation's expansionist ideology and its manifest destiny. Today, October 18th, celebrated as Alaska Day, commemorates the transfer of Alaska from Russia to the United States, marking a pivotal moment in American history. The Alaska Purchase remains a testament to the complexities and foresight involved in the nation's expansion and the enduring value of its vast northern territory. Early American period and exploration. Following the Alaska Purchase in 1867, the United States conducted limited exploration and development into its new territory. The immediate focus was on establishing a nominal American presence and asserting sovereignty over the vast and remote land. This period saw the establishment of a few military outposts, primarily to maintain order and offer a semblance of governments. Sitka, the former Russian capital of Alaska, became the center of American administration. The U.S. military established several outposts, albeit sparsely distributed across the region. These outposts served multiple functions, including protecting American interests, monitoring indigenous populations, and providing logistical support for any exploratory missions. One notable establishment was Fort Kenai, intended to oversee and manage interactions with native populations and maintain peace. The discovery of gold in the late 19th century significantly influenced the pattern of American exploration and settlement in Alaska. Although earlier Russian explorations had hinted at mineral wealth, it was American prospectors who ignited major gold rushes. The Klondike Gold Rush of 1896 to 1899, which technically began in Canada's Yukon Territory but had significant spillover effects into Alaska, brought a rush of prospectors through Alaskan territory, particularly via the port of Skagway. The Nome Gold Rush of 1899 to 1909 further intensified the influx of settlers and prospectors into Alaska. Despite these gold rushes primarily affecting areas far from Anchorage, they heightened interest in Alaska's mineral potential and spurred further exploration of the interior. Towards the end of the 19th century, systemic exploration and mapping of Alaska became a priority. The United States Geological Survey, the USGS, played a pivotal role in this endeavor, sending surveyors, geologists, and explorers to chart the region and identify its natural resources. These expeditions were critical in mapping the largely uncharted territory, documenting its geography, and assessing its economic prospects. Explorers like John Muir and geologists like Josiah Edward Spur and Alfred Huss Brooks conducted significant surveys. Their work provided valuable insights into Alaska's terrain, geology, and resource potential. These efforts revealed the immense natural wealth of the region, including gold, copper, coal, and oil, and laid the groundwork for future economic development. While the Anchorage area remained relatively undeveloped during this early period, the foundation was being laid for its future growth. The establishment of the Alaska Railroad in the early 20th century would later transform Anchorage from a remote wilderness area into a key logistical and transportation hub. The strategic location of Anchorage along the Cook Inlet and on the route of the planned railroad highlighted its potential as a center for future development. The increasing American presence and exploration activities significantly impacted Alaska's indigenous populations. Traditional lands and lifestyles were disrupted by the influx of prospectors, settlers, and military personnel. Conflicts over land use and resources arose, and the introduction of new diseases had devastating effects on Native communities. Despite these challenges, Indigenous groups such as the Dena'ina in the Anchorage area continued to maintain their cultural practices and adapt to the changing environment. The early American period also saw the beginning of infrastructure development, albeit on a limited scale. Trails and rudimentary roads were established to connect mining areas and outposts. Ports and trading posts were set up along key waterways to facilitate the movement of people and supplies. These early developments set the stage for more extensive infrastructure projects in the 20th century, including the Alaska Railroad and the construction of highways. The transformative moment for the Anchorage area came in 1914 with the decision to construct the Alaska Railroad. This ambitious project was initiated by the U.S. government under the leadership of President Woodrow Wilson and authorized by the Alaska Railroad Act of 1914. The primary objective was to create a transportation network that would connect the ice-free port of Seward to the interior town of Fairbanks, a distance of approximately 470 miles. This would facilitate the transportation of goods, people, and resources across Alaska, promoting economic development and integration with the rest of the United States. Anchorage is strategically located on the shores of Cook Inlet and was chosen as the headquarters for the railroad construction due to its central position between Seward and Fairbanks. The area's relatively flat terrain and proximity to water routes made it an ideal location for a major construction and supply hub. Before the construction of the railroad, Anchorage was a sparsely populated area with only a few hundred residents. The construction of the Alaska Railroad began in earnest in 1915. The project attracted workers, engineers, and their families, leading to a rapid increase in Anchorage's population. The federal government organized an auction of town lots on July 10, 1915, officially establishing the town site of Anchorage. The influx of workers and businesses transformed Anchorage from a remote wilderness into a bustling construction hub. The Alaska Railroad played a crucial role in the economic development of the Anchorage area and Alaska as a whole. It provided a reliable means of transporting goods, including construction materials, mining equipment, and agricultural products, which were previously difficult to move over long distances in the rugged Alaskan terrain. The railroad also facilitated the movement of people, promoting settlement and development along its route. The establishment of the railroad depot in Anchorage spurred the growth of various businesses, including hotels, restaurants, and supply stores, catering to the needs of railroad workers and travelers. This economic activity laid the foundation for Anchorage's emergence as a major urban center in Alaska. During World War II, the strategic importance of the Alaska Railroad became evident. The railroad was vital for transporting military personnel and supplies, particularly after the construction of major military installations such as Fort Elmendorf Air Force Base and Fort Richardson near Anchorage. The railroad's ability to move troops and equipment efficiently was crucial for the defense of Alaska and the northern Pacific region. After World War II, the Alaska Railroad continued to play a significant role in the development of Anchorage and the surrounding areas. The discovery of oil in Prudhoe Bay in 1968 and the subsequent construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline in the 1970s brought an economic boom to the region. The railroad facilitated the transportation of materials and equipment necessary for these large-scale industrial projects, further boosting the local economy. Today, the Alaska Railroad remains a vital part of Anchorage's infrastructure, serving as a key transportation link for both freight and passengers. It connects Anchorage with other major Alaskan cities and regions, supporting tourism, commerce, and industry. The railroad also offers scenic train rides, attracting tourists who want to experience Alaska's breathtaking landscapes. The construction of the Alaska Railroad was a transformative event for Anchorage, turning it from a remote and sparsely populated area into a major economic and logistical hub. The railroad facilitated the movement of goods and people, promoted economic development, and played a crucial role in the defense and industrialization of Alaska. Its impact on the growth and prosperity of Anchorage cannot be overstated, as it laid the foundation for the city's emergence as the largest and most important urban center in Alaska. On March 27, 1964, the second largest earthquake ever recorded hit Anchorage. Known as the Good Friday earthquake, the earthquake measured 9.2 on the Richter scale and remains the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North American history and the second most powerful in world history. The earthquake lasted approximately 4.5 minutes, causing widespread devastation across south central Alaska, with Anchorage experiencing some of the most severe damage. The earthquake's epicenter was located in Prince William Sound, about 75 miles east of Anchorage. The tremor triggered massive ground movements, including vertical displacements and horizontal shifting. In Anchorage, entire neighborhoods were destroyed as the ground fissured and shifted. Major landslides occurred in areas such as Turnagain Heights, where large sections of land slid into the ocean, taking homes and infrastructure with them. The earthquake also caused severe damage to the city's downtown area, collapsing buildings and disrupting utilities. The earthquake generated a series of tsunamis that wreaked havoc on coastal communities throughout Alaska. These tsunamis reached as far as the west coast of the United States and Hawaii, causing additional casualties and destruction. In the days and weeks following the main shock, numerous aftershocks, some of significant magnitude, continued to rattle the region, complicating recovery efforts and heightening fears among the population. The Good Friday earthquake resulted in the loss of 131 lives, most of which were due to the tsunamis rather than the quake itself. The economic impact was substantial, with damages estimated at around $311 million in 1964, equivalent to approximately $2.5 billion today. The destruction of infrastructure, homes, and businesses necessitated a massive rebuilding effort, profoundly affecting Anchorage's economy and urban landscape. The response to the earthquake involved coordinated efforts between federal, state, and local agencies. President Lyndon B. Johnson declared Alaska a disaster area allowing for federal funds and resources to be allocated for relief and reconstruction. The Federal Disaster Assistance Administration, the predecessor to FEMA, played a crucial role in providing aid and coordinating the recovery efforts. Local government and community organizations also mobilized to support those affected by the disaster. Temporary shelters were set up, and emergency services were expanded to address immediate needs such as food, water, medical care, and housing. The massive reconstruction effort that followed the earthquake significantly shaped the modern cityscape of Anchorage. Urban planners and engineers worked to rebuild the city with improved building codes and seismic standards to withstand future earthquakes. This included the reinforcement of existing structures and the construction of new buildings designed to be more resilient to seismic activity. Key infrastructure, such as railroads, bridges, and public utilities, were repaired and upgraded. The rebuilding process also provided an opportunity to redesign parts of the city, resulting in more efficient urban layouts and enhanced public spaces. The 1964 earthquake had a lasting impact on Anchorage, influencing its development for decades to come. The experience highlighted the importance of disaster preparedness and resilient infrastructure, leading to ongoing investments in seismic monitoring and public safety programs. The earthquake also fostered a sense of community resilience and cooperation, as residents and officials worked together to rebuild and recover. The spirit of solidarity and determination became a defining characteristic of Anchorage's identity. The Historic Anchorage Hotel, a landmark in downtown Anchorage, has a rich history dating back to the early 20th century. It was originally established to serve the growing number of visitors and workers coming to Anchorage due to the construction of the Alaska Railroad. Anchorage itself was founded in 1915 merely as a tent city for railroad workers, and the establishment of permanent structures like a hotel marked a significant step in the town's development. The original structure of the Historic Anchorage Hotel was constructed in 1916, just a year after Anchorage was officially established. This makes it one of the oldest hotels in the city. It was built to accommodate the influx of people drawn by the promise of work and prosperity that the project brought. The hotel's opening signaled Anchorage's transition from a temporary settlement to a more permanent and structured community. The hotel was designed in a style that reflected the frontier spirit of early Anchorage while incorporating elements of early 20th century architecture. It featured wooden construction typical of the period and was a modest yet elegant building compared to the tent accommodations and rudimentary structures that dominated Anchorage at the time. As Anchorage grew, so did the role of the Historic Anchorage Hotel. It became a social and business hub for the city. During its early years, the hotel hosted many notable guests, including railroad executives, politicians, and adventurers. It was a place where deals were made and social gatherings were held, contributing to the civic and economic life of the burgeoning city. Over the decades, the hotel underwent several renovations and expansions to meet the needs of a growing city and increasing numbers of visitors. Significant updates were made in the 1930s and 40s, which included modernizing the facilities and adding new amenities. Despite these changes, efforts were made to preserve the hotel's historic charm and architectural integrity. The 1964 Good Friday earthquake also impacted the historic Anchorage Hotel. Although the building sustained damage, it was repaired and restored, continuing to serve guests during the reconstruction period. The resilience of the hotel mirrored the broader recovery efforts of the city. In the later 20th century, the historic Anchorage Hotel was recognized for its historical and cultural significance. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1999, ensuring its preservation and celebrating its role in Anchorage's history. This designation helped protect the hotel from major alterations that could detract from its historical value. Today, the historic Anchorage Hotel stands as a testament to Anchorage's early days and its growth into a modern city. It offers a blend of historical charm and contemporary comfort, attracting both tourists and business travelers. The hotel's interior is adorned with historical photographs and memorabilia, providing guests with a glimpse into Anchorage's past. Adding to its allure, the Historic Anchorage Hotel is reputed to be one of the most haunted places in Alaska. Tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena have become part of its legacy. Guests and staff have reported sightings of spirits, including the ghost of a former police chief and other spectral figures. These stories contribute to the hotel's unique character and attract visitors interested in paranormal activities. There are so many occurrences by guests and staff of the hotel that there is a ghost log in the hotel lobby. Many of these events are thought to be linked to the death of Police Chief John J. Blackjack Sturgis. From the Historic Anchorage Hotel website, quote, on February 20th, 1921, at 9:15 p.m., Police Chief John J. Blackjack Sturgis was found shot in the back with a bullet from his own gun, steps away from the historic Anchorage Hotel. It is rumored that his ghost returns to the scene of the crime each year, haunting the location of his untimely death and seeking justice for a crime still unsolved to this day. End quote. John Sturgis was a significant figure in early Anchorage history, serving as the city's first chief of police. Born on December 24, 1861, in Mansfield, Ohio, Sturgis led an adventurous life that eventually brought him to Alaska. Before his tenure in Anchorage, he worked in various roles, including as a ranch hand, milkman, bartender, laborer, and night watchman. He also served as a law enforcement officer in Washington and Montana. In 1916, Sturgis moved to Anchorage to serve as a deputy U.S. Marshal. When Anchorage officially became a city on January 1st, 1921, he was appointed as its first chief of police, effectively making him a one-man police department. Tragically, just 6 weeks into his tenure, on February 20th, 1921, Chief Sturgis was found shot to death in the rear stairwell of a local drugstore. He had been shot in the chest with his own weapon by an unknown assailant. The case was never solved, and no motive was ever determined. Over the years, his unsolved death has fueled claims of paranormal activity, particularly at the Anchorage Hotel, where his apparition is said to appear annually on the anniversary of his death. In 2021, after nearly 2 years of research, Ghost Tours of Anchorage owner Rick Goodfellow and historian/musician Laura Koenig revealed that Jack Sturgis actually died at his own hand. Why his suicide was covered up for all these years remains a mystery, but Anchorage friends probably wanted to shelter his wife, Anna, from the truth for religious, social, or financial reasons. Chief Sturgis's life and untimely death remain integral to Anchorage's early history, symbolizing the challenges and mysteries of the frontier era. The ghostly legend of the bride at the historic Anchorage Hotel is one of the most well-known and chilling tales tied to the building. According to local lore, the young bride checked into the hotel with her fiancé, full of excitement for their upcoming day. However, tragedy struck when the groom disappeared on their wedding day, leaving the bride heartbroken and alone. The circumstances around his absence are unclear, with stories suggesting he either abandoned her or met an untimely fate. Devastated by the betrayal and despair, the bride is said to have taken her own life in the hotel while still dressed in her wedding gown. Since then, her ghost has reportedly lingered in the halls of the hotel, particularly on the second floor where guests and staff have seen her apparition. Descriptions of her appearance are haunting yet vivid. She is often seen as a tall, thin figure dressed in white, with a veil that flows as she moves. People who have encountered her ghost report feeling an intense sadness in her presence, as if her heartbreak is palpable. The bride is said to appear in darkened hallways and occasionally in mirrors, her ethereal image vanishing as quickly as it appears. Guests have reported strange sensations, sudden cold spots, and even the sound of soft, sobbing cries that seem to come from nowhere. The last of the spirits said to inhabit the hotel is that of a young boy. Guests and staff have reported sightings of a spectral child wandering the second-floor hallways, adding to the hotel's eerie reputation. The identity and backstory of this young apparition remain unclear, as historical records do not provide specific details about a child's death on the premises. Some speculate that he may have been a guest or the child of a staff member who met an untimely end, while others believe he could be connected to the hotel's early years during the construction of the Alaska Railroad, when many families resided in the area. Witnesses describe the boy as appearing in period clothing consistent with the early 20th century and often exhibiting playful behavior. Reports include hearing the sound of children's laughter, footsteps in empty corridors, and objects being moved or played with. Despite the unsettling nature of these encounters, many believe the spirit is harmless and simply a residual presence from the hotel's past. In the hotel's ghost log at the front desk, guests can document their paranormal experiences. Entries frequently mention encounters with the young boy, contributing to the hotel's haunted lore and attracting visitors intrigued by the supernatural. The Historic Anchorage Hotel is more than just a place to stay. It is a living piece of Anchorage's history. From its early days serving railroad workers to its status as a preserved historic landmark, the hotel reflects the evolution of Anchorage from a rugged frontier town to a vibrant urban center. Its blend of historical significance, architectural charm, and modern amenities continues to make it a cherished part of Anchorage's heritage. Thank you for joining me as we explored another amazing area of the Pacific Northwest. If you have stories of your own to share, follow me on social media at ParaNWPod and message or comment on a post. Also, check out our merch. We have a few different designs to represent your favorite aspect of the paranormal Pacific Northwest. Until next time, bye.